Marley was dead to begin with. But let us not begin where most tellings begin, with that famous first line delivered like a legal verdict. Let us begin instead with the dying itself, with the moment the soul left the body, with the cold London morning when Jacob Marley, businessman, moneylender, and partner of one Ebenezer Scrooge, drew his final breath in a room that smelled of medicine and regret. It is December 1836, 7 years before our story properly begins. The fog is so thick outside the windows that the world beyond might as well not exist. A fire burns low in the grate. Marley was never one to waste coal, even on his deathbed. And sitting in a chair by the bed, not holding Marley's hand, not weeping, not praying, is his business partner, Ebenezer Scrooge. He is watching Marley die with the same expression he uses when watching the market prices fluctuate. Calculation, assessment, a running tally behind the eyes. How much will the funeral cost? What happens to the business now? Will there be complications with the will? Has Marley remembered to sign the latest contracts? Marley's breathing changes. It becomes shallow, labored. There is a rattling sound in his chest, the death rattle, the doctors call it. Scrooge has heard it before. He knows what it means. He checks his pocket watch, notes the time. He will need it for the death certificate. The breathing stops. Scrooge sits for a moment, looking at the face of the only man in the world who understood him, the only man who shared his philosophy, that the purpose of life was accumulation, that sentiment was weakness, that charity was foolishness, that the poor were poor because they deserved to be. They were not friends exactly. Friendship implies warmth, and neither man had warmth to spare. But they were partners. They understood each other. They had spent decades together in that cold counting house, lending money at interest, collecting debts without mercy, building a fortune that neither of them would ever spend. And now Marley is dead, and Scrooge is alone. He does not weep. He does not pray. He closes Marley's eyes with 2 coins, silver coins, good ones, because Marley would have appreciated that. Nothing wasted, even in death. The coins will be retrieved before the coffin closes, of course. There is no sense in burying good money. Scrooge pulls the sheet over Marley's face. He stands. He walks to the window and looks out at the fog, at the grey nothing that has swallowed London whole. He feels nothing, or almost nothing. There is perhaps a faint sense of inconvenience. He will have to handle all the accounts himself now, at least until he can find a clerk competent enough to trust with the ledgers. There is perhaps a faint sense of satisfaction. Marley's share of the business will revert to him unless the will says otherwise. But grief? Sorrow? Loss? No. Ebenezer Scrooge does not feel such things. He cut them out of himself long ago, like a surgeon removing diseased tissue. They were weaknesses. They were vulnerabilities. They were doors through which pain could enter. He closed those doors decades ago, and he has never regretted it. Not once. The funeral is held 3 days later. It is attended by exactly one mourner, Scrooge himself. He has calculated the minimum acceptable expenditure for a respectable burial, respectable enough to avoid scandal, cheap enough to avoid waste, and he has paid it to the penny, not a farthing more. The minister reads the standard service, his breath coming out in white clouds in the freezing air. The coffin is lowered into frozen ground. The gravediggers wait impatiently, stamping their feet against the cold. eager to fill in the hole and get to the pub. No tears are shed. No eulogies are spoken. No one comes forward to share memories of the deceased, because there are no memories worth sharing. Jacob Marley lived for 70 years on this earth, and the sum total of his legacy is a name on a business sign and a fortune in the bank. Scrooge watches the dirt fall on the coffin. He thinks about the accounts that need balancing. He thinks about the interest payments due next week. He thinks about the coal bill, which is too high, and the clerk's salary, which might be reduced now that there is only one partner to serve. He does not think about eternity. He does not think about the soul that has just departed. He does not wonder where Marley has gone or what awaits him there. These are questions for philosophers and priests. Scrooge is a man of business. That night, Scrooge returns to the offices of Scrooge and Marley. He looks up at the sign above the door, barely visible in the fog. He considers having Marley's name removed. But no, that would cost money. The sign painter would have to be paid, and a new sign would have to be made. And besides, some of their clients still owe money to the firm under Marley's name. Better to leave it. Better to let the dead man's name continue to extract payments from the living. Scrooge never paints out old Marley's name. There it stands, years afterward, above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business call Scrooge by Marley's name. He answers to both. It makes no difference to him. What's in a name? Nothing that can be deposited in a bank. Marley is dead and Scrooge is alive, and that is all that matters. 7 years pass. 7 years of counting and lending and collecting and refusing. 7 years of Christmas days spent alone, of charity collectors turned away, of nephews' invitations declined, of human warmth treated as a disease to be avoided. 7 years of becoming harder, colder, more compressed into a single purpose, the accumulation of wealth that will never be spent, the hoarding of gold that will never bring joy. 7 years of forging a chain, link by link, yard by yard, though Scrooge does not know it yet. And then, on Christmas Eve, 1843, something happens. The dead man comes back. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. If you believe that the stories which shaped our world deserve to be explored, not the sanitized versions we tell children, but the real stories, with all their darkness and all their hope, then you can help us continue this work. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep diving into the narratives that made us who we are. Tonight, we will walk through the most influential piece of short fiction ever written in the English language. We will follow a miser through a haunted Christmas Eve. We will meet the ghosts who come to claim him. We will watch a man forced to witness his own death and choose to live differently. But more than that, we will meet the man who wrote it. Because here is the secret that makes A Christmas Carol more than just a ghost story. Charles Dickens did not imagine Scrooge's loneliness. He did not invent the abandoned child, left alone while the world celebrated without him. He did not create the terror of poverty from nothing. He remembered it. He remembered a 12-year-old boy sent to work in a factory while his family lived in a debtor's prison. He remembered the shame so deep he never told anyone about it until after he died. He remembered what it was to be abandoned on Christmas. A Christmas Carol is not just a story about a fictional miser learning to love Christmas. It is an exorcism. It is a man wrestling with his own ghosts. It is a wound transformed into a gift. And somehow, against all odds, it worked. This one short novel, written in 6 frantic weeks by a desperate author who needed money, did not just tell a story, it changed the world. It reinvented Christmas. It made Scrooge a word, and bah humbug a phrase, and God bless us everyone, a prayer that has been repeated by millions of people who have never read the original book. This is not ancient mythology. This is not legend passed down through generations, its origins lost in the mists of time. This is a story written in 1843 by a man who was running out of money and running out of time. A man who sat down to write a little book about Christmas and accidentally created something immortal. But before we meet the man who created the story, we must experience the story itself. We must walk where Scrooge walked. We must see what he saw. We must understand his terror and his transformation, and we must begin on Christmas Eve in the coldest, darkest, most miserable counting house in all of London. Welcome to the Midnight Archives. It is Christmas Eve, 1843. The fog has come down over London like a judgment. This is not the gentle mist of poetry, the romantic haze that softens edges and makes the world mysterious. This is a London particular. A fog so thick and yellow that you can taste it, coal smoke and river damp, and the collective exhalation of 2 million souls packed into a city that was never meant to hold them. The fog presses against windows like something alive and hungry. It seeps through cracks in doors. It creeps down chimneys and pools in corners. It turns the gas lamps into dim, sickly halos that illuminate nothing, that serve only to make the darkness visible. In the streets, people walk with their hands outstretched, feeling their way like blind men. Coaches move at a crawl, their drivers cursing, their horses snorting with fear. The Thames has disappeared entirely. You could walk off a dock and never know you were falling until you hit the black water below. This is London in December. This is the world's greatest city at the height of its power, choking on its own success. And in a small counting house near the Royal Exchange, in a room so cold that the frost has crept across the inside of the window panes in delicate crystalline patterns, 2 men are working. The first is Bob Cratchit. He sits at a desk in a tiny cell of a room that his employer calls the tank, a dark, cramped space barely large enough for a desk and a stool. There is no fire in this room. There is no source of warmth at all, except for a single candle by whose meager flame Bob is desperately trying to warm his hands. He wears a long white comforter, a kind of scarf wrapped around his neck and trailing down his back. His coat is threadbare, patched at the elbows, too thin for this weather. His fingers are so numb that he can barely hold his pen. His breath comes out in small white clouds that drift upward and disappear into the darkness. He is copying letters, endless letters, in his careful clerk's hand, recording the business transactions of Scrooge and Marley. Interest payments, debt collections, loan agreements, the machinery of commerce, grinding on even on Christmas Eve. Bob's desk faces a small window in the wall, not a window to the outside, but a window to the next room. His employer had this window installed specifically so that he could watch Bob at all times, so that he could ensure that not a single moment of the working day was wasted. Through that window, Bob can see his employer's fire. It is a very small fire, a pathetic fire, really. barely more than a few coals glowing in the grate. It could not warm a mouse, but Bob looks at it with longing nonetheless, because even that small fire is more than he has. He tried once to add more coal to his employer's fire. He thought perhaps a warmer office would make his employer more comfortable, more generous. He had gone to the coal box with the little shovel, ready to heap the fire with fuel. His employer had appeared behind him like a ghost, his eyes cold with fury. He had spoken only 2 words. "My coal." Bob had never tried again. Now he sits in his tank, his fingers blue, his nose red, his whole body shivering, trying to do his work, trying to earn his 15 shillings a week, trying to keep his family alive. In the next room, visible through that watching window, sits Ebenezer Scrooge. Look at him. Really look at him. He sits at his desk, hunched over his ledgers like a vulture over carrion. His pen scratches across the page with a sound like bones grinding together. His lips move as he calculates, adding up figures, recording profits, tallying the interest owed by 100 desperate debtors. He is old, but his age is hard to determine. He might be 60, might be 80, might have been old since childhood. His face is the face of a man who has spent his entire life indoors, away from sunlight, away from fresh air, away from everything that might bring color to the cheeks or warmth to the eyes. The cold within him has frozen his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait. His eyes are red from squinting at figures in dim light. His thin lips are blue with cold. Or perhaps they have always been that color, the color of a man whose blood runs cold in his veins. He carries his own low temperature always about him. He ices his office in the dog days of summer. No warmth can warm him, no wintry weather chill him. The heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. External heat and cold have little influence on Scrooge. The weather of the world cannot touch him because he has made his own weather, and it is always winter in his soul. Nobody ever stops him in the street to say, with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implore him to bestow a trifle, knowing it would be useless. No children ask him what time it is, because something in his face tells them he would not answer kindly. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquires the way to such and such a place of Scrooge, because he looks like the kind of man who would send them the wrong direction out of spite. Even the blind men's dogs appear to know him. When they see him coming, they tug their owners into doorways, pressing themselves against the walls, their tails between their legs. Animals know. Animals can sense these things. But what does Scrooge care? It is the very thing he likes. To edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance. That is what Scrooge would call living well. This is the man. This is the master of the counting house. This is the employer who gives Bob Cratchit 15 shillings a week and expects gratitude for it. The door of the counting house opens. A blast of cold air and fog enters, swirling around the room like an unwelcome ghost. And following the cold air comes a young man with a face so flushed with cold that it glows like a coal in the dimness. A young man dressed for celebration, his eyes bright with good cheer. This is Fred, Scrooge's nephew, the son of his sister Fan, who died giving birth to him, the only family Scrooge has left in the world. Fred bounds into the office like a puppy that doesn't know it's not wanted. His cheeks are red with cold. His breath is smoking. His entire being radiates warmth and energy and life. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle!" he cries. "God save you!" Scrooge does not look up from his ledger. "Bah!" he says. "Humbug!" Fred is not deterred. He never is. Every year, he comes to his uncle's counting house on Christmas Eve. Every year, he invites his uncle to Christmas dinner. Every year, he is refused, but still he comes. "Christmas a humbug, Uncle," Fred says, genuinely puzzled. "You don't mean that, I am sure." Now Scrooge looks up. His eyes are like two chips of ice in a face carved from stone. "I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough." Fred laughs. He cannot help it. It is his nature to laugh, to find joy even in adversity, to see the bright side of every situation. It is a trait he inherited from his mother, though Scrooge would never admit this. "Come then," Fred says. "What right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough." This is a dangerous game, and some part of Fred knows it, but he cannot resist. He loves his uncle, though his uncle has given him no reason to. He believes, he has always believed, that somewhere beneath that frozen exterior, there is a heart that can still be reached. Scrooge has no answer for this. He falls back on his default position, disgust. "Bah! Humbug!" "Don't be cross, Uncle." "What else can I be?" Scrooge returns. "When I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas! Out upon Merry Christmas! What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older but not an hour richer? A time for balancing your books and having every item in them through a round dozen of months presented dead against you?" He stabs his pen at the air as if attacking an invisible enemy, or perhaps attacking Christmas itself. "If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should." "Uncle!" "Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine." "Keep it," Fred exclaims. "But you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you. Much good it has ever done you." "There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say," Fred answers calmly, refusing to be drawn into anger. "Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it has come round, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time." He takes a breath. He is not finished. A kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of, in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. He pauses, warming to his theme. "And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good, and I say, God bless it." In the outer office, Bob Cratchit involuntarily applauds. The sound of his clapping hands echoes in the cold silence. Then he realizes what he has done, and the blood drains from his face. He dives back to his work, his pen scratching frantically at the paper, his heart pounding with fear. Scrooge glares through the little window between their rooms. "Let me hear another sound from you," he says, his voice deadly quiet. "And you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation." Bob does not look up. He does not breathe. He barely exists. Scrooge turns back to his nephew. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir. I wonder you don't go into Parliament. Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Scrooge looks at him as if he has suggested dining with cannibals. Dine with you? I'll see you in... Uncle, why did you get married? Because I fell in love. Because you fell in love! Scrooge says this as if it were the most ridiculous thing he has ever heard. More ridiculous than Christmas, more foolish than charity, more absurd than hope itself. Good afternoon. Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before I was married. Why give it as a reason for not coming now? Good afternoon. I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends? Good afternoon. Fred sighs. But he's not defeated. He's never defeated. His faith in humanity, in kindness, in love, is unshakable. It is the same faith that his mother had, the same faith that Scrooge himself had once, long ago, before he learned to be afraid. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel, to which I have been a party, but I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humour to the last. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon, and a Happy New Year. Good afternoon. Fred turns to go. He stops at the outer door to wish Bob Cratchit a Merry Christmas. Bob, poor soul, returns the greeting with enthusiasm, though it earns him another glare from Scrooge. And then he is gone, out into the fog, back to his warm house, and his warm wife, and his warm life. Scrooge watches him go, his face expressionless. If he feels anything, regret, loneliness, the stirring of some long-buried emotion, he does not show it. He has had decades of practice at not showing things. He turns back to his ledgers. There is work to be done. No sooner has Fred left than more visitors arrive. Two portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, their faces rosy with cold and good cheer. They carry books and papers. They wear the air of men on a mission. They take off their hats and bow to Scrooge, who is clearly the master of this establishment. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe, says one of them, consulting his list. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years, Scrooge replies. He died 7 years ago, this very night. We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. This is almost funny. Marley had no liberality. Neither does Scrooge. The word is a foreign language to them both. The two gentlemen look at each other, then press on. They have clearly done this many times before. They are professionals at extracting charity from reluctant donors. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, says one of them, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir. Are there no prisons? Asks Scrooge. The gentlemen exchange glances. This is not the response they were expecting. Plenty of prisons, says one. And the union workhouses, Scrooge continues. Are they still in operation? They are. Still. I wish I could say they were not. The treadmill and the poor law are in full vigour then. Both very busy, sir. Oh, Scrooge says, and there is something like relief in his voice. I was afraid, from what you said at first, that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it. The gentlemen are confused now. They have come to ask for charity, And this man seems to think that prisons and workhouses are charity enough. Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude, one of them ventures carefully, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for? Nothing? You wish to be anonymous. I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there. Many can't go there, and many would rather die. And here Scrooge says the words that will haunt him, the words that will be thrown back in his face before this night is over, the words that reveal, more clearly than anything else could, exactly what he has become. If they would rather die, Scrooge says, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. The surplus population. Let those words sink in. Let them settle into your mind like the fog that has settled over London. This is not just Scrooge speaking. This is Victorian economics speaking. This is the philosophy of Thomas Malthus, who argued that poverty was inevitable and natural, that the poor bred too quickly, that helping them only made things worse. This is the Poor Law of 1834, which created workhouses designed to be so miserable, so degrading, so inhumane, that only the truly desperate would enter them. The workhouses separated husbands from wives, children from parents. They fed their inmates on thin gruel. They put them to work breaking stones or picking oakum until their fingers bled. They were, by design, a punishment for the crime of being poor. And Scrooge supports them. Scrooge pays his taxes and considers his duty done. Scrooge looks at the suffering of his fellow human beings and sees not tragedy, but mathematics. Too many people, not enough resources. The solution is obvious. Decrease the surplus population. This is not evil in the way that murder is evil. This is something more insidious. This is evil that wears the mask of reason, evil that justifies itself with numbers and arguments and economic theories, evil that allows a man to watch children starve and feel nothing at all, not because he is cruel, but because he has convinced himself that their starvation is necessary, natural, good for the economy. The gentlemen leave, recognizing that nothing can be gained from this quarter. They have seen this before, this cold righteousness, this perfect certainty that poverty is a moral failing of the poor. They will not waste their time arguing. Scrooge returns to his work, satisfied that he has defended himself against the assault of charity. He does not know, not yet, that he has just pronounced judgment on himself. The day ends. The fog has thickened into true darkness, not the darkness of night, but something deeper, something almost solid. Bob Cratchit puts down his pen, his work finally done. He begins wrapping his white comforter tighter around his neck, preparing for the long, cold walk home. "You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?" Scrooge asks. "If quite convenient, sir." "It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop £0.50 for it, you'd think yourself ill-used. I'll be bound." Bob smiles faintly. He cannot help it. It is in his nature to smile, even in the face of his employer's cruelty. "Yes, sir, I suppose I would." And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work." Bob has no answer for this. He has learned, over years of employment, that there is no winning an argument with Scrooge. The only strategy is endurance. Scrooge waves a dismissive hand. "Be here all the earlier the next morning." Bob promises that he will. He grabs his hat and is out the door before Scrooge can change his mind, running down the street toward Cornhill, where his children are waiting to go sliding on the ice. Bob Cratchit, who makes 15 shillings a week, who has a sick child at home, who will somehow conjure a Christmas feast out of almost nothing. Bob Cratchit is going to have Christmas with his family, and Scrooge is going home alone. He takes his melancholy dinner at his melancholy tavern, a dark place that suits his temperament, where the food is adequate and the company non-existent. He reads the newspapers, all of them, every word, because newspapers are information and information is power. He goes over his bank book, tracing the figures with a bony finger, reassuring himself that his money is still there, still growing, still safe. And then, because there is nothing else to do and no one else to see, he goes home. Home is a set of rooms in a building that was once a grand house, in the time when this part of London was fashionable. That was long ago. Now the house has been broken up into offices and apartments, and the only resident who lives there is Scrooge. The other rooms are all let out as offices. Scrooge's own counting house is on the ground floor, and the building has a quality of desertion about it. The yard is so dark that even Scrooge, who knows its every stone, has to grope his way with his hands. The fog and frost so hung about the black old gateway of the house that it seemed as though the genius of the weather sat in mournful meditation on the threshold. Scrooge climbs the stairs alone, his candle casting wild shadows on the walls. The staircase is wide enough to accommodate a hearse, a dark thought that has occurred to Scrooge before. The house seems to be waiting for something, waiting perhaps for him to die. He reaches his door. His hand is on the key, and then he sees it. The door knocker. It is a large knocker, brass, weathered with age. Scrooge has looked at it 1,000 times and never given it a second thought. It is a knocker, nothing more, a piece of metal attached to a door. But tonight, in the dim light of his candle, the knocker is not a knocker. It is Marley's face, not a shadow, not a trick of the light, not a vague resemblance. Marley's face, complete and entire, looking at him out of the door. It is the same face that lay on the pillow 7 years ago, in that cold room, breathing its last. The same heavy jaw, the same prominent nose, the same thin, pursed lips. But now the eyes are open, wide open, and they are looking at Scrooge with a terrible expression. Not anger, worse than anger, warning. The face has a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. A faint, sickly glow emanates from it, illuminating itself but nothing else. And as Scrooge looks at it, frozen in place, unable to move or speak or think, the hair seems to stir as if blown by breath or hot air from someplace far below. The dead eyes move in their sockets. They find Scrooge. They hold him. There is recognition in those eyes. Recognition and something else. Something that might be pity, if the dead could pity the living. Scrooge stares at the face. The face stares back at Scrooge. And then Scrooge blinks. Just once. When he opens his eyes, it is a knocker again. Just a knocker. Brass. Cold. Nothing more. Scrooge stands there for a long moment. His heart is beating faster than he would like to admit. His hand, holding the candle, is trembling. The wax drips onto his fingers, hot and sharp, but he barely notices. "Pooh-pooh," he says aloud, to hear the sound of his own voice, to break the silence that has fallen over the stairway. His voice echoes off the walls and comes back to him, sounding thin and frightened. He puts his key in the lock and turns it. He goes inside. He checks behind the door. Nothing. He walks through the rooms, holding his candle high, looking into every corner, every shadow. He checks the sitting room, the bedroom, the lumber room. Nothing. Everything is as it should be. Everything is as it has been for 7 years. He double locks himself in. He puts on his dressing gown, his slippers, his nightcap. He sits down by the very small fire to eat his gruel. Gruel. On Christmas Eve. While the rest of London feasts on goose and pudding and plum cake, while families gather around blazing fires and children shriek with excitement, Ebenezer Scrooge eats gruel alone in his dark chambers. This is the life he has chosen. This is the life he has built for himself, penny by penny, year by year. A life without warmth, a life without joy, a life without anyone who would notice if he died tonight and was not discovered until spring. He sits by his tiny fire, spooning thin porridge into his mouth, and he tells himself he is content. He tells himself he has everything he needs. He tells himself that Christmas is humbug, that charity is foolishness, that love is weakness, and that he, Ebenezer Scrooge, is the wisest man in London. And then he hears it, a sound, coming from below, from the cellar, a clanking noise, deep and heavy, like chains being dragged across stone. Scrooge stops eating, listens. The clanking grows louder, closer. It is coming up through the house. He can trace its progress, floor by floor, staircase by staircase. Something heavy is climbing toward him. Something that drags chains behind it. Something that is coming to his door. "It's humbug still," Scrooge says, but his voice comes out as a whisper. His hands are shaking. His gruel has gone cold in its bowl. The clanking reaches the landing outside his door. It stops. Silence. Then the door flies open with a booming sound that shakes the walls. The candles flare and gutter. The fire in the grate blazes up and then dies down again, as if something has drawn all the heat from the room, and through the door comes Jacob Marley. The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, his usual waistcoat, tights and boots. The tassels on his boots bristle, like his pigtail, and his coat skirts, and the hair upon his head. His eyes are wide and staring, but they are Marley's eyes. His jaw hangs slightly open, but it is Marley's jaw. There can be no doubt about it. This is Jacob Marley, dead these 7 years, standing in Scrooge's doorway as if he had never left. But there is more. Marley's body is transparent. Scrooge can see through him to the door behind, to the bolts and screws that he himself had fastened. The ghost has a kind of solidity, a presence, but it is not the solidity of flesh. It is something else, something wrong, and wrapped around him, wound about him like a tail, is a chain. What a chain! It is long. It trails behind him, disappearing through the door, extending down the stairs, into the darkness below. It is made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. Each item is something Scrooge recognizes. The tools of his trade, the instruments of his life's work. The chain clasps itself about Marley's middle and binds his arms to his sides. Scrooge has seen this chain before. He has helped forge it, link by link, deal by deal, debt by debt. He just never knew what it would look like when it was finished. The ghost enters the room. It moves not like a living thing, but like smoke, drifting, floating, its feet not quite touching the floor. The chain clanks and rattles with every movement. Scrooge falls back in his chair. He tries to speak, but the words will not come. All his cleverness, all his quick wit, all his cutting remarks, they have deserted him. He is alone with the impossible, and he has no weapons against it. "How now?" he manages at last, forcing the words through lips that do not want to move. "What do you want with me?" "Much." The voice is Marley's, the same voice, the same tone, but there is something hollow about it now, something that echoes as if it comes from a great distance, from somewhere far below the earth. "Who are you?" "Ask me who I was." "Who were you then?" Scrooge asks, his voice rising despite himself. "You're particular for a shade." "In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley." Can you sit down?" "I can." "Do it then." The ghost sits. It drifts down into the chair opposite Scrooge, and the chain coils around it like a serpent settling into its nest. Scrooge stares at it. He's trying to find a rational explanation. There must be one. There has to be one. He does not believe in ghosts. He has never believed in ghosts. Ghosts are for children and fools, for people who cannot face the cold reality of the universe. "You don't believe in me," the ghost says, as if reading his thoughts. "I don't." "What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?" "I don't know." "Why do you doubt your senses?" "Because," Scrooge says, grasping at the straw of reason, "a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of underdone potato. There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are." This is vintage Scrooge, a terrible pun used as a weapon. Even in his terror, he cannot resist showing off his cleverness. But the ghost is not amused. Marley raises a frightful cry that makes Scrooge clutch the arms of his chair to keep from falling. The sound fills the room, fills the building, fills the world. A shriek of such agony and despair that it seems to come from the depths of hell itself. And as the ghost cries out, it seizes the bandage that is wrapped around its head, the bandage that Scrooge himself had tied 7 years ago to keep the dead jaw from falling open, and it unwraps it. The jaw drops. It falls down upon the ghost's breast, hanging loose and horrible, like a broken door. This is too much. Scrooge falls upon his knees, his hands clasped before his face. "Mercy! Dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?" "Man of the worldly mind," the ghost replies, its voice distorted by its dangling jaw. "Do you believe in me or not?" "I do, I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?" The ghost raises its arms, or tries to. The chains hold them tight. It strains against them, and the cash boxes and ledgers clank together in a cacophony of metal. It is required of every man, the ghost says, that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world, oh woe is me, and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth and turned to happiness. The ghost wrings its hands, and the chain rattles again. The sound is like a death knell, like the tolling of a funeral bell. "You are fettered," Scrooge says, observing the chain. "Tell me why." "I wear the chain I forged in life," replies the ghost. "I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you?" Scrooge looks more closely at the chain. Cash boxes, ledgers, keys to safes, padlocks, deeds of property, heavy purses, the tools of his own trade, the symbols of his own life. He trembles. He begins to understand. "Or would you know," the ghost continues, "the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain." Scrooge glances around him, half expecting to see his own chain trailing behind him, dragging on the floor, extending out through the wall into the darkness. He sees nothing, but the thought is there now, and it will not leave. His chain, his own chain, forged link by link, deal by deal, debt by debt. Every time he refused charity, every time he turned away a beggar, every time he chose gold over humanity, each choice was a link, each link was a weight, and the chain grows heavier every day. "Jacob!" Scrooge cries, clasping his hands together. "Old Jacob Marley, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob." "I have none to give," the ghost answers. "It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest, I cannot stay, I cannot linger anywhere." The ghost's voice breaks. Something that might be a sob emerges from its ruined throat. "My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me. This is Marley's hell. Not fire, not demons, just the endless walking, the endless wandering, through a world full of suffering that he can see but cannot relieve. He had his chance to help when he was alive. He wasted it. Now he must watch forever as others suffer and know that he could have prevented it if only he had cared. Scrooge tries one more defense, the only one left. "But you were always a good man of business, Jacob." The ghost's reaction is immediate and terrible. "Business!" it cries, and the word echoes through the room like a curse. "Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business." The ghost holds up its chain, shaking it so that the cash boxes clang together and the padlocks rattle. "At this time of the rolling year," the ghost continues, "I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down and never raise them to that blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me? Scrooge is trembling now. He wants to say something, but the words will not come. "Hear me!" cries the ghost. "My time is nearly gone." "I will," Scrooge stammers. "But don't be hard upon me. Don't be flowery, Jacob. Pray." How it is that I appear before you in a shape that you can see, I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day. This is a chilling thought. Marley has been watching him for 7 years perhaps, watching him eat his solitary meals, count his money, turn away the poor, curse Christmas, watching and unable to speak, unable to warn, until tonight. That is no light part of my penance, the ghost says, as if confirming Scrooge's thoughts. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. A chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer. You were always a good friend to me, Scrooge says, and for once, there is no irony in his voice. Thankee. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Scrooge's face falls. This does not sound like the chance and hope he was hoping for. Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob? It is. I think I'd rather not. Without their visits, the ghost says, and its voice has become very cold, very final. You cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1. Couldn't I take 'em all at once and have it over, Jacob? Expect the second on the next night at the same hour, the third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that for your own sake you remember what has passed between us. The ghost walks backward toward the window. It does not turn around. It drifts, as if pulled by invisible strings. The window rises of its own accord. It opens wide, letting in the fog and the cold and the sounds of the night. And as it opens, Scrooge hears something from outside. Sounds, voices, wailing. He rises from his chair and goes to the window, and what he sees stops his heart. The air is filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste, moaning as they go. Every one of them wears chains like Marley's, some short, some long, some so heavy that the spirits can barely move. Some are linked together in groups, bound to each other for eternity. Some are chained to heavy safes, to stacks of gold coins, to objects that must have defined their earthly lives. Scrooge knows some of them. That one was a banker he did business with, a hard man, a ruthless man, now wrapped in chains of ledgers and receipts. That one was a politician who died in disgrace. His chain is made of broken promises and unsigned treaties. That one, God help him, that one was a man Scrooge himself had ruined, a debtor who died in prison because Scrooge would not forgive a loan. And all of them are suffering, not from fire, not from physical torment. They are suffering from something worse, impotence. For even as Scrooge watches, he sees what the spirits see. Down in the street below, visible through a gap in the fog, a homeless woman crouches in a doorway, clutching a baby to her chest. She is trying to warm the child with her own body, but she has no warmth left to give. The baby whimpers. The mother weeps. The ghosts see her. They swoop down toward her, desperate to help, but they cannot. Their hands pass through her like smoke. Their voices cannot reach her. They can only watch as she shivers. as the baby grows quiet, as Christmas Eve passes without mercy. The misery with them all was, clearly, that they sought to interfere, for good, in human matters, and had lost the power forever. This is their hell. Not flames, not demons, just the eternal knowledge of what they could have done and didn't. The eternal sight of suffering they could have prevented when they were alive and had the power to act. Marley's ghost joins the procession. It floats out through the window and takes its place among the damned, and as it drifts away into the fog, its voice echoes back. Remember, Ebenezer, remember what has passed between us. The window closes, the sounds fade, the fog swallows the spirits, and they are gone. Scrooge is alone. He stands at the window for a long time, staring out at nothing. His hands are shaking. His breath is coming in short, sharp gasps. Everything he believed, everything he thought he knew about the world, has been shattered. Ghosts are real. The dead can return. And there is a judgment waiting for him. He tells himself it was a dream. Bad digestion, the fog, the cold, his mind playing tricks after a long day. There must be a rational explanation. There has to be. He goes to bed. He does not undress. He simply falls onto the mattress and pulls the covers up to his chin. He lies there in the darkness, his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The church bell tolls. Once, twice, counting out the hours of the night. Sleep, when it finally comes, is not restful. And somewhere in the darkness, something is waiting. The first spirit will come at 1 o'clock. Scrooge wakes in the pitch black. The fire has died completely. Not even embers remain. The room is so dark that he cannot tell where the windows end and the walls begin. He lies in his bed, rigid with fear, listening to the silence. No, not silence. Something else. Breathing, not his own. The church bell tolls. Scrooge counts the strokes, his lips moving silently. 12. Midnight. Marley said the first spirit would come at 1. He lies there, waiting. He does not sleep. He cannot sleep. His eyes are open, staring into the darkness, though there is nothing to see. His ears strain for any sound. A footstep, a breath, the clanking of chains. But there is only silence. And then the bell tolls again. Once. 1 o'clock. Light. It comes from nowhere and everywhere at once. A soft, golden glow that fills the room, that seems to emanate from the very air. Scrooge blinks against it, his eyes watering after so long in the dark. The bed curtains are drawn back, not by Scrooge, not by any visible hand. They simply move, sliding along their rails, parting like the curtains of a theatre to reveal the stage beyond. And standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by that strange light, is a figure. It is not like any figure Scrooge has ever seen. It is like a child, but also like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium that diminishes the adult while revealing the child within. Its face is smooth, unwrinkled, with the clear skin of youth, but its hair is white, long and white, falling past its shoulders like a mantle of snow. And its eyes are ancient, filled with a wisdom that no child could possess. The body is strange too. The arms are long and muscular, but the hands are delicate, as if their power lies not in strength, but in gentleness. The legs and feet are bare, as though it has no need for shoes, as though it walks on paths where shoes would be useless. It wears a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist is a lustrous belt, the sheen of which is beautiful. But strangest of all is the light. From the crown of its head springs a bright, clear jet of light, a beam that illuminates everything it touches. This is the source of the glow that fills the room. The spirit carries its own light with it, like a candle that can never be extinguished. It holds something under its arm, a great cap, like an extinguisher for a candle. And as Scrooge watches, trying to make sense of what he is seeing, the figure changes. It fluctuates, like a reflection in disturbed water. Now it has one arm, now 20. Now it has legs, now none. Now a head, now no body at all. The parts dissolve and reappear without any visible order, as if the spirit cannot quite decide what shape to take. Scrooge sits up in bed, clutching the covers to his chest. "Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?" "I am." The voice is soft and gentle, singularly low, as if instead of being so close beside him, it were at a distance. Yet it fills the room. Yet it fills Scrooge's mind. "Who and what are you?" "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" "No, your past." Scrooge feels a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature of the room. His past. Not the ancient past, not the historical past, but his own personal past. The things he has done, the choices he has made, the person he used to be. "What brings you here?" he asks. "Your welfare." The spirit pauses. Its eyes, young and old at once, study Scrooge with an intensity that makes him want to look away. "Your reclamation, rise and walk with me." Scrooge wants to argue. He wants to stay in bed, to pull the covers over his head, to pretend this is all a dream. But something in the spirit's voice, something gentle but absolutely unyielding, compels obedience. He rises. He is wearing his nightgown and slippers, his nightcap still on his head. He feels ridiculous, unprepared, vulnerable, but the spirit does not seem to care about his appearance. It extends its hand. "Take hold," it says. "Bear but a touch of my hand upon your heart, and you shall be upheld in more than this." Scrooge hesitates. The spirit's hand looks solid enough, but he has seen solid things turn to smoke tonight. He has seen the impossible become possible. He takes the hand. It is warm. It is real. It closes around his fingers with a grip that is firm, but not unkind. And then the spirit moves toward the window. "I am mortal," Scrooge protests, hanging back, "and liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand upon your heart," the spirit repeats, "and you shall be upheld in more than this." The spirit's free hand touches Scrooge's chest, just over his heart, and as it does, Scrooge feels something change. The weight of his body seems to lessen. The pull of the earth seems to fade. They pass through the wall as if it were made of nothing at all, as if Scrooge himself were nothing more than smoke and light and memory, and then they are somewhere else entirely. They are not in London anymore. The fog is gone. The city is gone. The cramped, dark rooms are gone. They are standing on an open country road. with fields on either side and a clear, cold sky above. The air is fresh and clean, scented with hay and wood smoke, and the particular crispness of winter in the country. Snow lies on the ground, but it is the clean snow of the countryside, not the dirty, trampled slush of the city. It sparkles in the light of a pale winter sun. It crunches underfoot, or would crunch if Scrooge were walking on it. But he is not quite touching the ground. He is floating, drifting, suspended by the Spirit's hand on his heart. "Good heaven!" he exclaims, clasping his hands together. "I was bred in this place. I was a boy here." The Spirit gazes upon him mildly. "You recollect the way? Remember it? I could walk it blindfolded." And something strange happens to Scrooge's voice as he says this. Something softer, something younger. The cold, hard edge is gone, replaced by something almost like wonder. They move along the road. Every gate, every post, every tree is familiar. This is the landscape of Scrooge's childhood, unchanged by the decades. There is the old mill, its wheel frozen in ice. There is the bridge where he used to catch tadpoles in the spring. There is the church steeple, rising above the trees. 1,000 half-forgotten smells assail him. Hay and horses and wood smoke, bread baking in distant cottages, the particular scent of winter in a place where the air is still clean. Scrooge breathes deep, and for a moment, just a moment, he is a boy again. They see travellers on the road ahead, boys on ponies riding toward them, calling to each other, laughing. Their cheeks are bright with cold. Their breath steams in the air. They are going home for Christmas. You can tell from the way they ride, eager and happy, shouting about what they will eat and what presents they hope to receive. These are but shadows of the things that have been, the Spirit says. They have no consciousness of us. The boys pass through Scrooge as if he were made of air, and as they pass, he names them, one by one. He names them, boys he has not thought of in 50 years. Their faces suddenly clear in his memory. That one was James, who used to share his lunch. That one was William, who could climb any tree. That one was Thomas, who told the best stories. They are all old men now, or dead, but here, in this moment, they are young and alive and full of joy. "Why does my heart leap so?" Scrooge whispers. His eyes are wet with tears. He does not understand. The Spirit does not answer. It simply points ahead, to a large brick building that stands alone at the end of a lane. The school. It is a bleak place, even in the bright winter sunlight. The walls are stained with damp. The windows are cracked. The roof sags in the middle, as if the building itself is tired. A sign above the door identifies it as an academy, but it looks more like a prison. They pass through the wall and find themselves in a long, bare, melancholy room. Rows of plain wooden desks face a cold fireplace. The walls are decorated with maps and charts, faded with age, their colours muted by decades of dust. The room smells of chalk and loneliness. And sitting at one of the desks, alone, is a boy. He is perhaps 8 or 9 years old. He is thin, too thin, with hollow cheeks and dark circles under his eyes. His clothes are worn, patched in places, too small for his growing frame. He sits hunched over a book, reading by the light of a meagre fire, the only source of warmth in the vast, empty room. All around him, the other desks are empty. All the other boys have gone home for Christmas. Only this one remains. Scrooge looks at the boy and feels something crack inside his chest. A wall he built long ago, a wall he thought was impenetrable, is beginning to crumble. He sits down on one of the empty desks and weeps. "Poor boy," he says, the words coming out in a sob. "Poor, poor boy." The spirit touches his arm gently. "You pity him?" "Yes." "He is you." Scrooge knows this. Of course he knows this. He has known it from the moment they entered the room. But hearing it spoken aloud, hearing it confirmed by this ancient, childlike spirit, makes it real in a way it has not been for decades. This is him, this lonely, abandoned child reading in an empty room while the world celebrates without him. This is Ebenezer Scrooge, before he learned to be cold, before he learned to protect himself with walls of ice, before he decided that love was weakness and joy was foolishness, and the only thing that mattered was money. This is the wound at the center of his life. "I wish," Scrooge mutters, putting his hand in his pocket, "but it's too late now." "What is the matter?" asks the spirit. "Nothing, nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something. That's all." The spirit smiles strangely. "Let us see another Christmas." The scene shifts. They are in the same room, but time has passed. Years have passed. The boy at the desk is older now, perhaps 12 or 13, but he is still alone, still reading, still waiting, and no longer hoping. You can see it in his face. The younger boy had a kind of desperation in his eyes, a hope that maybe, this year, someone would come. Maybe this year, Father would relent. Maybe this year, he would go home. But this boy has given up. He no longer expects rescue. He has made his peace with abandonment. He has started building the walls that will one day make him the coldest man in London. And then the door bursts open. A little girl rushes in, much younger than the boy, perhaps 6 or 7, but brimming with energy and joy. Her face is flushed from the cold. Her hair is wild from the wind. She has clearly run all the way from wherever she came from, because she is out of breath and laughing and crying at the same time. She throws her arms around the boy's neck and covers his face with kisses. "Dear, dear brother," she cries, "I have come to bring you home." The boy, young Scrooge, stares at her as if she is speaking a foreign language. "Home, little fan. Yes, home for good and all, home for ever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be, that home's like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night when I was going to bed, that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home. And he said, 'Yes, you should,' and sent me in a coach to bring you. And you're to be a man, and are never to come back here. And we're to be together all the Christmas long, and have the merriest time in all the world." The transformation in the boy's face is remarkable. The deadness leaves his eyes. The tension leaves his shoulders. For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time ever, he smiles. He grabs his sister and spins her around, and they are both laughing, both crying, both overwhelmed by joy. Scrooge, the old Scrooge, the ghost Scrooge watching from the shadows, feels his heart twist in his chest. "Fan," he whispers. "Oh, Fan." The spirit stands beside him, watching. "She was a delicate creature," it says quietly. whom a breath might have withered. But she had a large heart. So she had. You're right. I will not gainsay it, Spirit. God forbid. She died a woman, the Spirit continues, and had, as I think, children. One child. True, your nephew. Scrooge does not answer. He is watching the two children, his younger self and his beloved sister, as they prepare to leave the school forever. He is watching the joy on their faces. He is remembering. Fan died young. She died, giving birth to her only child, Fred. The nephew who came to Scrooge's office today, the nephew he turned away with curses and contempt. He has been punishing Fred for his mother's death. For 30 years, he has been looking at his nephew and seeing the cause of his sister's suffering. He has been cold to the son because he lost the mother. He never realized it before. He never let himself realize it, but he realizes it now. The scene shifts again. They are in London now, but a different London. A London that still has room for joy. A large warehouse, its doors thrown open to the winter night. Candles burn in every window. Holly and ivy hang from the rafters. A fire roars in the great stone fireplace, filling the space with warmth and light. And in the center of the room, directing the chaos like a benevolent general, is an old man with a Welsh wig that seems to have a life of its own. "Why, it's old Fezziwig!" Scrooge exclaims. "Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig alive again!" Old Fezziwig, the man who gave young Scrooge his first job, his first chance, his first glimpse of what a good employer could be. The man who treated his apprentices like sons, his customers like friends, his wife like a queen. "Yo-ho there!" Fezziwig cries, clapping his hands together. "Ebenezer! Dick!" Two young men appear from the back of the warehouse. One of them is young Scrooge, not the frozen miser of later years, but a bright-eyed youth, quick to laugh, eager to please. The other is his fellow apprentice, Dick Wilkins. "Dick Wilkins, to be sure!" old Scrooge exclaims. "Bless me, yes, there he is. He was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick, dear, dear." "Yo-ho, my boys," Fezziwig shouts. "No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson." The transformation is immediate. The warehouse, which was a place of business moments ago, becomes a ballroom. The shutters go up. The desks are cleared away. The floor is swept and sanded. A fiddler appears in the doorway, a man with a music book, who makes the great beam over the fireplace to sing as he tunes his instrument. And then the guests arrive. Mrs. Fezziwig comes first, one vast substantial smile, as Dickens describes her. Then the Fezziwig daughters, 3 of them, beaming and beautiful. Then the young men who are clearly in love with the Fezziwig daughters. Then the housemaid, blushing. Then the baker. Then the cook. Then the milkman. Then the boy from down the road. Then more and more and more. Everyone is welcome at Fezziwig's party. The fiddler strikes up a tune. The dancing begins. Scrooge watches with shining eyes. He watches his younger self dance with a pretty girl. The pretty girl, he realizes with a pang, who will later become Belle. He watches Fezziwig dance with Mrs. Fezziwig, the two of them moving together with the ease of long practice and longer love. He watches everyone laughing, eating, celebrating. There is more food than anyone could possibly eat. There is more drink than anyone could possibly drink. There are games and songs and stories and laughter that echoes off the rafters like music. And at the center of it all is Fezziwig, old, fat, ridiculous Fezziwig, with his Welsh wig and his round belly and his heart as big as the warehouse itself. When the clock strikes 11, the party ends. The guests depart with warm wishes and warmer handshakes. The fiddler packs up his violin and goes home, his pockets jingling with the coins Fezziwig pressed into his hand. The candles are snuffed, the fire is banked, and the warehouse returns to darkness. The spirit turns to Scrooge. "A small matter," the spirit says, "to make these silly folks so full of gratitude." "Small," Scrooge echoes, surprised. "Why, is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?" And here, something remarkable happens. For the first time tonight, Scrooge argues not for coldness but for warmth. For the first time tonight, he defends not the logic of money, but the logic of the heart. "It isn't that," he says, speaking unconsciously like his former, not his latter self. "It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune." He stops. He feels the spirit's eyes upon him. "What is the matter?" "Nothing," Scrooge says. "Nothing. I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all." Bob Cratchit, working in that freezing tank for 15 shillings a week, scolded for wanting Christmas Day off, threatened with dismissal for the crime of applauding. Fezziwig spent 3 or 4 pounds on his party, 3 or 4 pounds, and he created joy that his apprentices would remember for the rest of their lives. Scrooge pays Bob Cratchit 15 shillings a week and creates nothing but misery. The spirit smiles, as if it knows exactly what Scrooge is thinking. "My time grows short," it says. "Quick." The scene shifts one more time. A room, a fire, a young woman sitting in a chair, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes wet with tears she is trying not to shed. Across from her sits a young man. He is perhaps 25, dressed well but not extravagantly. His face has already begun to settle into the hard lines that will define it in later years. His eyes, which were once warm and full of laughter, have grown cold and calculating. This is Scrooge, and the woman is Belle, the woman he was going to marry in the days before gold became his god. "It matters little," Belle says quietly, her voice steady despite the tears. "To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve." "What idol has displaced you?" young Scrooge demands, though he already knows the answer. "A golden one." Belle looks down at her hands. She is holding something. A ring, Scrooge realizes. The engagement ring he gave her years ago when they were both poor and both happy. "This is the even-handed dealing of the world," young Scrooge says, his voice rising. "There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth." "You fear the world too much," Belle answers gently. "All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Have I not? Young Scrooge opens his mouth to argue, but no words come. Because she is right. Because he knows she is right. Because the boy who loved her, the boy who would have died for her, has been slowly replaced by something colder and harder and meaner. What then, he says at last. Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I am not changed towards you. Belle shakes her head sadly. Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so, until, in good season, we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man. I was a boy, Scrooge says. Your own feeling tells you that you are not what you are, Belle says. I am. That which promised happiness when we were one in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often and how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is enough that I have thought of it and can release you. Have I ever sought release? In words, no, never. In what then? In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of life, another hope as its great end, in everything that made my love of any worth or value in your sight. If this had never been between us, tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now? Ah, no. Young Scrooge starts to speak, but Belle raises her hand. You would not, and I release you, with a full heart, for the love of him you once were. She stands. She places the ring on the table between them. You may. The memory of what is past half makes me hope you will have pain in this. A very, very brief time, and you will dismiss the recollection of it gladly as an unprofitable dream from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen. She leaves. The door closes behind her with a soft click, and young Scrooge sits there, alone in the empty room, his face a mask of indifference. But his hands are gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles have turned white. Old Scrooge, the Scrooge watching from outside time, feels something break inside him. A dam he built long ago, a wall he thought would hold forever. Spirit, he cries, turning away from the scene. Show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me? One shadow more, the spirit says. No more. I don't wish to see it. Show me no more. But the spirit is relentless. The scene shifts. They are in another room now. A comfortable room, warm and bright. A fire blazes in the grate. Children play on the floor, not one or two, but many, tumbling over each other like puppies. And in a chair by the fire sits Belle. She is older now, her hair touched with grey, her face lined with the years. But she is beautiful still, beautiful with the kind of beauty that comes from a life well lived, from love given and received, from children raised and grandchildren expected. She is not alone. She is surrounded by family, surrounded by warmth, surrounded by everything that Scrooge threw away. The door opens. A man enters, her husband, clearly, from the way her face lights up when she sees him. He is carrying packages wrapped in brown paper, presents for the children. Belle, he says, laughing, I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon. Who was it? Guess. How can I? Tut, don't I know? She smiles. Mr. Scrooge. Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone. Quite alone in the world, I do believe. Quite alone in the world. The words echo in Scrooge's ears. This is the life he could have had. This warmth, this love, this family gathered around the fire. These children who could have been his children. This woman who could have been his wife. This is what he traded for gold. "Spirit!" Scrooge cries, turning on the figure beside him. "Remove me from this place." "I told you these were shadows of the things that have been," the spirit says calmly, "that they are what they are. Do not blame me. Remove me. I cannot bear it." He lunges at the spirit, grasping for the extinguisher cap that it carries under its arm. If he can put out the light, if he can stop seeing, if he can just make it dark again. His hands close around the cap. He forces it down upon the spirit's head. The spirit struggles against him, but Scrooge is desperate, and desperation gives him strength. He presses down with all his might, trying to extinguish the light, trying to snuff out the visions, trying to escape the past. The light streams out from every part of the spirit, from beneath the cap, from its arms and legs, from the floor itself. Scrooge presses harder. The light flares, blinds him. And then he is back in his bedroom, sprawled on his bed, the covers tangled around him. The fire is dead. The room is dark. The clock shows that time has passed. It is almost 2. He is alone, but he is not finished. Light is bleeding under the door to the next room, a room that was empty when he went to bed, a room that should not have light in it. Something is waiting for him. The second spirit has arrived. Scrooge lies in his bed, staring at the light beneath the door. He does not want to open that door. He does not want to see what waits beyond. He has had enough of spirits and visions and the past laid bare. He wants only to sleep, to forget, to wake up tomorrow and find that this was all a dream. But he knows it was not a dream. He knows the spirits are real. And he knows that if he does not face them, the fate Marley described will be his. He rises from his bed. His legs are unsteady, his hands are trembling, but he forces himself to walk. One step, another. The distance to the door seems impossibly long, but he crosses it. He reaches for the handle. The door opens before he can touch it. The room beyond, his own sitting room, which he has known for years, which is as familiar to him as his own face, has been transformed into something from a dream. The walls and ceiling are hung with living green, holly and mistletoe and ivy, so thick that the plaster beneath has vanished entirely. The leaves reflect the light of a roaring fire, a fire far larger and brighter than anything Scrooge has ever allowed in this room, and they glitter like jewels. And the food, heaped upon the floor to form a kind of throne, are turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, sucking pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense 12th cakes, and seething bowls of punch that made the chamber dim with their delicious steam. It is Christmas incarnate. It is everything that Scrooge has denied himself and everyone else for decades. And sitting on that throne of food, surrounded by that blaze of warmth and light, is the second spirit. If the first spirit was strange and ethereal, hard to see and harder to understand, this one is overwhelming in its presence. It is a giant, It sits upon its throne of food like a king, its head almost brushing the ceiling, its body filling half the room. It wears a simple green robe, bordered with white fur, open at the breast, as if it has no need for warmth. Its feet are bare, resting on the piled food beneath them. On its head sits a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. Its hair is dark and long and curly. Its face is genial. Its eyes are sparkling. Its cheeks are ruddy. Its voice, when it speaks, is cheerful and booming. In its hand, it holds a glowing torch, shaped like Plenty's horn, and it raises this torch to shed its light on Scrooge. "Come in!" it cries. "Come in and know me better, man!" Scrooge enters timidly. He is small in this transformed room, small before this tremendous spirit. He looks up at the being on its throne, and despite his fear, despite everything, he feels something stirring in his chest. Hope, perhaps, or wonder. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," says the spirit. "Look upon me." Scrooge does so, reverently, and as he looks, he notices details he missed before. The spirit's feet are bare, not clean and pampered, but dirty and worn, as if they have walked many miles on hard roads. The green robe is simple, almost poor, and there is a scabbard at the spirit's side, a scabbard that is ancient and rusted, eaten up with disuse. The scabbard is empty. There is no sword. "You have never seen the like of me before," exclaims the spirit. "Never," Scrooge admits. "Have never walked forth with my elder brothers born in these later years." "I don't think I have." "I am afraid I have not." "Have you had many brothers, spirit?" "More than 1,800. More than 1,800. A spirit of Christmas present for every year since the birth of Christ. And Scrooge has never walked with any of them. He has spent his life ignoring Christmas, shutting it out, treating it as an enemy. "Spirit," Scrooge says, and his voice is different now, humbler, more uncertain. "Conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learnt a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it." The spirit looks at him for a long moment. Then it smiles, a wide, warm smile that transforms its face from something overwhelming to something almost kind. "Touch my robe." Scrooge does as he is told. His fingers close around the green fabric, and the room vanishes around them. They are standing in the streets of London on Christmas morning, but it is not the London Scrooge knows. The fog is gone, dispersed by a cold, clear wind. The sky above is blue, actually blue, a colour Scrooge rarely sees in this smoke-choked city. Snow covers the ground, fresh and white and sparkling in the morning sun, and the streets are alive. People pour out of their houses, laughing and calling to each other. Children race through the snow, throwing snowballs, building snowmen. Church bells ring from every steeple, calling the faithful to worship. The air smells of roasting meat and baking bread, and the sharp, clean scent of winter. The grocers' shops are still half open, though it is nearly time for church. Onions, oranges, pears, apples, grapes, nuts, cakes. Everything that could possibly be wanted for a Christmas feast are displayed in tempting piles. Customers rush in and out, making last-minute purchases, their arms full of packages. The poulterers' shops show turkeys and geese hanging in rows, Sausages coiled like serpents, barrels of oysters, baskets of chestnuts. The bakers' shops are busier still. Poor families bring their dinners to be cooked, wrapped in cloths, because they have no ovens of their own. The spirit watches all this with evident pleasure, and as it watches, it sprinkles incense from its torch upon the dinners of the people, especially on the poor dinners. "Is there a particular flavour in what you sprinkle from your torch?" Scrooge asks. "There is. My own." "Would it apply to any kind of dinner on this day?" "To any kindly given, to a poor one most." "Why to a poor one most?" "Because it needs it most." They pass through the city, seeing Christmas morning in all its glory. They see a group of children, roughly dressed, gathered around a snowman. They see an old couple, arm in arm, walking to church. They see a young man with a sprig of holly in his buttonhole, his face alight with anticipation. He is going to see his sweetheart, Scrooge realizes. Everywhere there is joy. Everywhere there is warmth. Everywhere there is the spirit of Christmas, which Scrooge has spent his life denying. And then the spirit leads him away from the busy streets, away from the shops and the churches, toward the poorer parts of the city. They arrive at a small house in Camden Town. It is not much to look at. A 4-room dwelling, barely large enough for the family that lives there. The paint is peeling. The windows are patched. The chimney smokes badly, sending grey puffs into the clear blue sky. But as Scrooge watches, he sees something else. He sees Mrs. Cratchit, Bob's wife, bustling about the kitchen in a twice-turned gown, a dress that has been taken apart and reassembled with the worn side hidden. It is brave with ribbons, which are cheap but cheerful. He sees the 2 youngest Cratchits, a boy and a girl, setting the table, arguing over who smelled the goose first. He sees young Peter Cratchit trying to look grown up and serious, though his excitement keeps breaking through. He sees Belinda Cratchit, almost as brave as her mother, helping with the preparations. The spirit touches the door and they pass through it. Inside, the house is warm, not with wealth, but with love. A fire burns in the grate, not large, but sufficient. The smell of cooking fills the air, and the sound of laughter, rising and falling, fills every corner. "What has ever got your precious father then?" says Mrs. Cratchit. "And your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha wasn't as late last Christmas Day by half an hour." "Here's Martha, mother," cry the 2 young Cratchits. "Hurrah! There's such a goose, Martha." Martha enters, the eldest daughter, who works as a milliner's apprentice. She is tired, but she is smiling. She hugs her mother, her sisters, her brothers. She is home. "Why, bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are," says Mrs. Cratchit, kissing her a dozen times. "We'd a deal of work to finish up last night," replies Martha, "and had to clear away this morning, mother." "Well, never mind so long as you are come," says Mrs. Cratchit. "Sit ye down before the fire, my dear, and have a warm. Lord bless ye." "No, no, there's father coming," cry the 2 young Cratchits. "Hide, Martha, hide." Martha hides, laughing. And the door opens, and in comes Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk, the man who earns 15 shillings a week, the man who sat in the freezing tank just yesterday. But he does not look like a man who earns 15 shillings a week. He looks like a king, because on his shoulder, wrapped in a muffler against the cold, sits a small boy, Tiny Tim. He is small, so frail, that Scrooge wonders how he has survived this long. His legs are withered. He cannot walk without a crutch, a little crutch that Bob has made for him from scraps of wood. His face is pale. His eyes are too large for his face. But those eyes are bright with life and joy and something that might be called faith. He looks around the room at his family, and his face lights up with a smile that transforms him from a sickly child into something almost radiant. "And how did little Tim behave?" asks Mrs. Cratchit, when they have all greeted each other. "As good as gold," says Bob, his voice thick with emotion. "And better. Somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me, coming home, that he hoped the people saw him in the church, because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see." Bob's voice trembles. He has to turn away for a moment to compose himself. His son, his youngest son, his Tim, may not live to see another Christmas. The doctors have said as much. Without better food, better medicine, better care that Bob cannot afford on 15 shillings a week, the boy will not survive. But Bob does not think about that now. Today is Christmas. Today is for joy. The goose is brought in. Not a large goose. Not enough to feed 7 people comfortably. But Mrs. Cratchit has worked miracles with it. The stuffing, the gravy, the applesauce, everything is perfect. The youngest Cratchits beat the table with their spoons and cry, "Hurrah!" The pudding comes next. A small pudding, but blazing with brandy and decorated with holly. Mrs. Cratchit brings it in, trembling with anxiety. What if it is not cooked through? What if it has stuck to the cloth? What if? But it is perfect. Of course it is perfect. There is never enough food in the Cratchit house, but what there is always prepared with love. The meal is eaten, the chestnuts are roasted, the punch is made, and through it all, Tiny Tim sits by his father's side, his little crutch leaning against his chair. Scrooge watches all of this with a growing sense of unease. He sees the poverty, the worn clothes, the meager fire, the small portions. But he also sees something else. He sees love. He sees a family that has almost nothing, and yet has everything that matters. And he sees Tiny Tim, the boy who might not live to see another year. "Spirit," says Scrooge, with an interest he has never felt before. "Tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat," the spirit replies, "in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." "No, no," Scrooge cries. "Oh no, kind spirit, say he will be spared." "If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race will find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population." Scrooge hangs his head. He remembers saying those words, was it only yesterday, to the charity collectors. He remembers the cold certainty with which he spoke them. He remembers believing them. "Man," says the spirit, "if man you be in heart, not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you have discovered what the surplus is and where it is. Will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child." Oh God, to hear the insect on the leaf pronouncing on the too much life among his hungry brothers in the dust. Scrooge bows his head before the spirit's rebuke. He has no answer. He has no defense. At the table, Bob Cratchit raises his glass. "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us." And the family echoes him, their voices rising together, filling the small house with joy. And Tiny Tim, last of all, cries out in his tiny voice, "God bless us, everyone." But the meal is not quite over. Bob Cratchit raises his glass again. "Mr. Scrooge," he says. "I'll give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast." The temperature in the room seems to drop. Mrs. Cratchit's face darkens. "The founder of the feast, indeed," she says. "I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hope he'd have a good appetite for it." "My dear," says Bob mildly. "The children. Christmas Day." "It should be Christmas Day, I am sure," Mrs. Cratchit replies. "On which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow." "My dear," Bob says again. "Christmas Day. I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's," says Mrs. Cratchit. "Not for his. Long life to him. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt." The children drink the toast after her. It is the only part of the day that has no heartiness. The mere mention of Scrooge has cast a dark shadow on the party, and it takes a full 5 minutes for that shadow to pass. Scrooge watches this with growing shame. This is how the world sees him. This is his legacy, a name that brings darkness, a presence that sucks the joy from any room. Is this all he will leave behind? The spirit takes Scrooge further, across the city, to a warm house in a pleasant neighborhood. Through the walls they pass, into a bright room where a party is in progress. It is Fred's house. Scrooge's nephew, the son of his beloved sister Fan, is hosting Christmas dinner. The guests are playing games, blind man's buff, yes and no, how, when, and where. They are laughing, teasing each other, enjoying themselves thoroughly. Fred's wife is there, pretty and bright-eyed. Friends and family fill the room, and they are laughing about Scrooge. "He said that Christmas was a humbug as I live," cries Fred. "He believed it too." "More shame for him, Fred," says Fred's wife. "He's a comical old fellow," Fred admits. "That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. I'm sure he is very rich, Fred." "What of that, my dear? His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking, ha, 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 that he's ever going to benefit us with it." More laughter. But Fred's face grows serious. "I have no patience with him," says Fred's wife. "Oh, I have," says Fred. "I am sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Here, he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner." "Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner," interrupts Fred's wife. "But he loses much more than that. He loses the pleasure of our company." Fred raises his glass. "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, whatever he is. He wouldn't take it from me, but may he have it nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge." "Uncle Scrooge," the guests echo. Scrooge, invisible, watches his nephew with new eyes. Fred is not mocking him, not really. Fred is worried about him. Fred loves him, has always loved him, despite everything. Despite the coldness, the rejection, the years of turned down invitations. Fred sees something in his uncle that Scrooge himself had forgotten. Something worth saving. The night is ending. The spirit has aged visibly. Its hair has gone grey. Its face has grown lined. It moves more slowly now, as if weighted down by years. "Are spirits' lives so short?" asks Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," the spirit replies. "It ends tonight." "Tonight! Tonight, at midnight. Hark, the time is drawing near." The chimes are playing in a nearby church, the quarter hour, 11:45. Scrooge looks at the spirit more closely. Something is wrong. Something is hidden beneath the green robe, something that moves. "Forgive me if I am not justified in what I ask," Scrooge says, "but I see something strange, and not belonging to yourself, protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw?" "It might be a claw," the spirit says slowly, "for the flesh there is upon it." The spirit pulls back its robe. Clinging to its legs, like animals to a tree, are two children. But they are not children as Scrooge has ever seen children. They are yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish. They are the children of nightmares. Hollow-eyed, sharp-featured, their skin pulled tight over their bones. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurk. Scrooge starts back in horror. "Spirit, are they yours?" "They are man's," the spirit says, and its voice is heavy with sorrow. "And they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both, and all of their degree. But most of all, beware this boy. For on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased." Scrooge looks at the boy, at ignorance, and he sees what the spirit means. This is not just one child. This is millions of children. Children who will never learn to read or write, who will never have a chance, who will grow up knowing nothing but poverty and crime and despair. This is the future that Victorian society is creating by neglecting its young. "Have they no refuge or resource?" Scrooge cries. "Are there no prisons?" the spirit says, turning Scrooge's own words against him. "Are there no workhouses?" The church bells begin to strike. 1, 2, 3. The spirit fades. The children fade. The warmth and light fade. And Scrooge is alone in the darkness. But not for long. Something is approaching. Something dark. Something silent. Something that makes no sound at all. The last of the three spirits. And this one has no face. The phantom approaches slowly, moving like mist across the ground. It is shrouded in a deep black garment, which conceals its head, its face, its form, and leaves nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. The hand is pale, grey almost, and the fingers are long and thin. It points forward, always forward, and it does not speak. Scrooge kneels before it, trembling. The other spirits have been strange, even frightening, but this one is different. This one carries with it an atmosphere of death. Not the memory of death, like Marley's ghost, but death itself. "I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come." The spirit does not answer. It only points onward with its hand. You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that so, spirit? The upper portion of the garment contracts for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That is the only answer Scrooge receives. "Ghost of the future!" Scrooge exclaims. "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" The spirit points again, only points. Lead on, spirit." They are in the city, in the heart of commercial London. The Royal Exchange rises before them, its columns like teeth. Businessmen rush past, their faces intent, their minds on money. A group of these men have gathered on the steps, talking among themselves. Scrooge recognizes them. He has done business with all of them. They are respectable men, successful men, men of the world. "No," says a great fat man with a monstrous chin. "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquires another. "Last night, I believe." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asks a third, taking a vast quantity of snuff from a very large snuff box. "I thought he'd never die." "God knows," says the first with a yawn. "What has he done with his money?" asks a red-faced gentleman with a pendulous excrescence on the end of his nose. "I haven't heard," says the man with the large chin. "Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know." This pleasantry is received with a general laugh. "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," says the same speaker, "for upon my life, I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer." "I don't mind going if a lunch is provided," observes the gentleman with the excrescence on his nose. "But I must be fed if I make one." Another laugh. "Well, I am the most disinterested among you after all," says the first speaker, "for I never wear black gloves, and I never eat lunch, but I'll offer to go if anybody else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend, for we used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye. The speakers and listeners stroll away and mix with other groups. Scrooge watches them go. He knows the man they are discussing. He must know him. They spoke of him as someone Scrooge would recognize, but who? Who has died and left so little mark upon the world that his funeral is a joke. "Spirit," Scrooge says, "let me see some tenderness connected with a death, or that dark chamber will be forever present to me." The spirit leads him on. The scene shifts. They are in a darker part of London now, a part that Scrooge has never visited, though he has spent his life in this city. The streets are narrow and filthy. The buildings lean against each other as if too tired to stand alone. The people who live here have faces that tell stories of poverty and crime. They enter a shop, a low-ceilinged, dusty place lit by a single candle. The proprietor is a grey-haired man with sharp eyes and sharper fingers. His name, according to the sign outside, is Old Joe. 3 people are waiting in the shop: a charwoman, a laundress, and a man in faded black who appears to be an undertaker's assistant. They have bundles. They have come to sell. "Let the charwoman alone to be the first," cries the woman who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone to be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, Old Joe, here's a chance, if we haven't all 3 met here without meaning it." "You couldn't have met in a better place," says Old Joe. removing his pipe from his mouth. "Come into the parlour. You were made free of it long ago, you know, and the other two aren't strangers. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Ah, how it squeaks. There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in the place as its own hinges, I believe, and I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. Ha ha! We're all suitable to our calling, we're well matched. Come into the parlour. Come into the parlour." They enter the back room, where a candle burns more brightly and a small fire smokes in the grate. They open their bundles. The charwoman shows her wares first: pencils, a seal, a case of sleeve buttons, a brooch of no great value. "What do you call this?" says old Joe. "Bed curtains." "Ah," returns the woman, laughing and leaning forward on her crossed arms. "Bed curtains? You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him lying there?" "Yes, I do. Why not?" Old Joe gives her a fair price, or what passes for fair in this place, and she takes her money and goes. The laundress is next. She has blankets and towels, good quality once, though worn now. And then, "What's this?" old Joe asks. "A shirt." "His shirt," says the undertaker's man. "It was the best he had. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me." "What do you call wasting of it?" "Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. Calico will do just as well. He can't look uglier than he did in that." Scrooge listens to this conversation with growing horror. These people, these vultures, have stripped the belongings from a dead man's house, from a dead man's body. They have taken the curtains from his bed while he lay in it. They have taken the shirt from his back, and no one stopped them. No one was there to stop them. "Spirit!" Scrooge cries. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this?" The scene shifts. They are in a bedroom now. A dark, cold bedroom. The curtains torn from the windows, the furniture stripped of value. On the bed, covered with a ragged sheet, lies a body. The spirit points at the covered form. Scrooge advances toward it, trembling. The room is bare, empty, cold. No candles burn. No fire warms the grate. The dead man lies alone, attended by no one, mourned by no one. The spirit's finger does not waver. It points at the head of the bed, at the place where the face would be. "I understand you," Scrooge says, his voice barely a whisper. "And I would do it, if I could. But I have not the power, spirit. I have not the power." He cannot lift the sheet. He cannot see the face. Something in him, some last vestige of denial, holds him back. "Spirit," he says, "this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson, trust me. Let us go." The spirit points again, unmoved. "If there is any person in the town who feels emotion caused by this man's death," Scrooge says desperately, "show that person to me, spirit. I beseech you." The spirit spreads its dark robe, and they are elsewhere. A room, a poor room, but clean. A man sits by the fire, his head in his hands. A woman stands nearby, anxious, waiting for news. "Is it good or bad?" she asks. "Bad," says the man. "We are quite ruined?" "No, there is hope yet, Caroline." "If he relents," she says. "There is. Nothing is past hope, if such a miracle has happened." "He is past relenting," says the man. "He is dead." The woman's face is a study in conflicting emotions. She knows she should be sad. She is trying to be sad. But something else keeps breaking through. Relief, hope, joy. What the half-drunken woman whom I told you of last night said to me when I tried to see him and obtain a week's delay, and what I thought was a mere excuse to avoid me, turns out to have been quite true. He was not only very ill, but dying then. To whom will our debt be transferred? I don't know. But before that time, we shall be ready with the money, and even though we were not, it would be a bad fortune indeed to find so merciless a creditor in his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline. They embrace. Their children, who have been listening at the door, rush in to join them. The room fills with laughter and tears and relief. This is the only emotion the dead man's death has caused. Not grief, not loss, just relief that he is gone and can torment them no more. Scrooge watches this scene with a cold feeling in his chest. He knows now, or begins to know, who the dead man is. Let me see some tenderness connected with a death, he says again, his voice breaking, or that dark chamber will be forever present to me. The spirit brings him to the Cratchit house. It is quiet, too quiet. The chaos and laughter of Christmas morning is gone. The children sit still, their faces pale. Mrs. Cratchit is sewing by the fire, her eyes red from weeping. The crutch stands in the corner, without an owner. Tiny Tim's chair is empty. Bob Cratchit enters from outside. His face is wet. He has been to the churchyard. "You went today then, Robert?" says Mrs. Cratchit. "Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child, my little child." He breaks down completely. The grief he has been holding back, the grief he has hidden from his children, from his wife, from the world, it pours out of him now in great, racking sobs. Mrs. Cratchit rises and goes to him. She holds him while he weeps. The children gather around, their small hands reaching out to touch their father, to comfort him. "My little child," Bob says again. "My little child." Scrooge watches this scene, and something inside him, something that has been frozen for decades, begins to crack. This is real grief. This is what it looks like when someone is truly mourned, truly loved, truly missed. This small boy, this crippled child of a poor clerk, is grieved with a passion that kings might envy. And the man under the sheet, the man whose belongings were stolen before his body was cold, the man whose death brought only relief. No one will grieve like this for him. No one will grieve like this for Scrooge. "Spirit," says Scrooge, "something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead." The ghost of Christmas yet to come does not answer. It leads him to a churchyard, a bleak, overgrown place, choked with weeds, fat with too much burying. The spirit stands among the graves and points down to one. Scrooge advances toward it slowly. Every step is an effort. Every step brings him closer to the truth he already knows. "Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point," he says, "answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only?" The spirit is silent. It only points. Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if persevered in, they must lead, Scrooge says, almost pleading. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say, "It is thus," with what you show me. The spirit is immovable. Scrooge creeps forward. He looks at the gravestone, neglected, weathered, the inscription barely legible. He reads the name. Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed? The finger points from the grave to him and back again. No, spirit. Oh, no, no! Scrooge clutches at the spirit's robe. It tries to free itself, but he will not let go. Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? For the first time, the spirit's hand seems to shake. Good spirit, your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. The spirit does not answer, but it does not pull away. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Scrooge falls upon his knees, clutching the phantom's robe. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. In his agony, he seizes the spectral hand. It struggles to free itself, but Scrooge is desperate, and desperation gives him strength. He holds on, his fingers white with effort. And then the spirit begins to change. Its robes contract, its form dwindles. It shrinks, collapses, dwindles down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in. Scrooge scrambles out of bed. He is laughing, actually laughing, a sound he has not made in years, a sound that feels strange in his throat. He catches sight of himself in the mirror, a wild-eyed old man in a nightgown, his nightcap askew, his face streaked with tears, and he laughs harder. I will live in the past, the present, and the future, he cries, tumbling out of bed. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. O Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees. He is so fluttered and so glowing with his good intentions that his broken voice will scarcely answer to his call. He has been sobbing violently, and his face is wet with tears. They are not torn down, he cries, clutching one of his bed curtains in his arms. They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here. I am here. The shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. His hands are busy with his garments all this time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them, mislaying them. He does not care. He is alive. He is alive, and it is Christmas morning, and nothing else matters. I don't know what to do, he cries, laughing and crying at the same time. I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Hallo here, whoop, hallo. He runs to the window and throws it open. No fog, no mist. Clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold, cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. What's today? Cries Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes, who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. Eh? Says the boy, looking up. What's today, my fine fellow? Today? Why, Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Scrooge looks at the boy. A bright lad, this one, with quick eyes and a quicker smile. The kind of boy he would have ignored yesterday. The kind of boy he would have called part of the surplus population. Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner? Scrooge asks. I should hope I did. An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one. What? The one as big as me? What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck. It's hanging there now. Is it? Go and buy it. Walker, says the boy. No, no, I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and tell him to bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown. The boy is off like a shot. The bullet from a rifle could not have gone faster. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's, Scrooge whispers, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be. The hand in which he writes the address is not steady, but write it he does somehow, and goes downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. It arrives. It is a turkey so large that Scrooge can barely believe it is real. He pays for everything: the turkey, the cab, the cabman, a tip for the boy that makes the boy's eyes pop out of his head. Merry Christmas, Scrooge calls after the cab as it drives away toward Camden Town. Scrooge dresses himself in his best clothes. Everything about him is changed, not just his face, which is alight with joy, but his very bearing. He walks differently. He breathes differently. He seems to take up more space in the world. He goes out into the streets, and the streets seem different too. The same streets he has walked for decades, but transformed. Everyone is smiling. Everyone is happy. Everyone is alive with the spirit of Christmas. He pats children on the head and finds it surprisingly pleasant. He questions beggars and finds their stories surprisingly interesting. He looks down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and finds that everything can yield him pleasure. He never dreamed that any walk, that anything, could give him so much happiness. And then he sees one of the charity collectors, one of the portly gentlemen who came to his office yesterday, who asked for a donation, who was sent away with nothing. Scrooge quickens his pace. My dear sir, he says, taking the old gentleman by both hands. How do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir. Mr. Scrooge? Yes, that is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness? Here Scrooge whispers in the gentleman's ear. Lord bless me, cries the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious? If you please, not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor? My dear sir, I don't know what to say to such Don't say anything, please. Come and see me. Will you come and see me? I will, cries the old gentleman. Thank ye. I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times, bless you. Scrooge walks on. He passes churches, and the bells are ringing, and the sound fills him with joy. He passes houses where families are gathering, and he does not feel jealousy or bitterness. He feels hope. Hope that he too might have a family someday. Hope that he too might be welcomed somewhere. He stops outside a house he knows well. A house he has never entered, though he has been invited many times. Fred's house. He walks up to the door. He raises his hand to knock. He hesitates. What if Fred turns him away? What if the years of rejection have finally taken their toll? What if? No, he will not think like that. Not today. He knocks. A servant opens the door. "Is your master at home, my dear?" says Scrooge. "Nice girl. Very. Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" "He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please." "Thank ye. He knows me. I'll go in here, my dear." He turns the handle and walks into the dining room. Fred and his wife are there, along with their guests. They are just sitting down to dinner. They look up as Scrooge enters. "Fred!" says Scrooge. Fred stares at him. His wife stares at him. Everyone stares at him. "Why, bless my soul!" cries Fred. "Who's that?" "It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" For a moment, no one speaks. Scrooge can feel his heart pounding. He has taken a risk, the greatest risk of his life, and now he must wait to see if it will pay off. And then Fred's face breaks into a grin, the same grin he had yesterday when he bounded into Scrooge's office with his Christmas wishes. "Let him in! Bless his heart! Let him in!" Fred nearly shakes his arm off. His wife kisses him. The guests welcome him like a long-lost friend. Scrooge stays for dinner. He plays games. He drinks toasts. He tells jokes, bad jokes mostly, but everyone laughs anyway. He feels, for the first time in decades, like he belongs somewhere, like he is home. The next morning, Scrooge is at his office early. He sits at his desk, waiting. The fire is blazing, a real fire, not the tiny ember he usually allows. The room is warm. Bob Cratchit arrives 18.5 minutes late. Scrooge has been watching the clock. He is ready. "Hello," Scrooge growls in his accustomed voice, as near as he can feign it. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "I am very sorry, sir," says Bob. "I am behind my time." "You are?" "Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please." Bob follows him, trembling. He expects to be fired. He expects the worst. "I'll tell you what, my friend," says Scrooge. "I am not going to stand this sort of thing any longer, and therefore—" Bob reaches for the ruler on his desk, instinctively, though he would never actually use it. "And therefore," Scrooge continues, "I am about to raise your salary." Bob stares at him. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," says Scrooge, clapping him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. He became a second father to Tiny Tim, who did not die. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them. For he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone, and that is how the story ends. One man transformed, one family saved, one holiday redeemed. But here is the thing about Charles Dickens. He did not invent this story from imagination alone. He knew what it was to be abandoned on Christmas. He knew what it was to be a child, cold and alone, while the world celebrated without him. He knew because he had lived it, and he had spent 20 years trying to forget. To understand A Christmas Carol, you must understand the man who wrote it, and to understand the man, you must understand a secret he kept for his entire life, a secret he never told his own children, a secret he revealed only after his death. Charles Dickens was born in 1812 in Portsmouth, England. His father, John Dickens, was a clerk in the Navy Pay Office, a respectable position, well paid with good prospects. His mother, Elizabeth, was a woman of some education and refinement. The early years were happy. Charles was a bright child, quick to learn, with a prodigious memory and an insatiable love of reading. His father recognized his potential. This boy, John Dickens would say, will be something special. But John Dickens had a fatal flaw. He could not manage money. He was charming, generous, fond of entertaining, and completely incapable of living within his means. The family moved constantly, always one step ahead of the creditors, always looking for a fresh start in a new place. By 1822, they were in London, and the situation had become desperate. John Dickens owed money to everyone, tradesmen, landlords, friends. He borrowed from anyone who would lend, and then borrowed more to pay the interest on what he already owed. And then, in February 1824, the inevitable happened. John Dickens was arrested for debt. Under English law at the time, a man who could not pay his debts could be imprisoned in the Marshalsea, a debtor's prison in Southwark. He would remain there until the debt was paid or until he died. His family could choose to live with him in the prison itself, or they could fend for themselves outside. Elizabeth Dickens made her choice. She took the younger children and moved into the Marshalsea with her husband. But Charles was 12 years old enough to work, old enough to contribute to the family income. 2 days before his father was arrested, Charles was sent to Warren's blacking factory. It was a rotting, crumbling warehouse near Hungerford Stairs, by the Thames. The stairs led down to the river, where the water lapped against the green, slimy wood, where rats scurried in the shadows. Inside the warehouse, boys sat at long tables, pasting labels on bottles of boot polish. The blacking, a mixture of oil, lamp black, and other substances, was sold throughout London. The bottles had to be labelled, sealed, and packed. This was Charles's job, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 6 shillings a week. He worked alongside boys from the streets, rough boys, uneducated boys, boys who had never known anything better. They called him the young gentleman because of his manners, his speech, his obvious education. They did not mean it kindly. The shame was annihilating. Charles Dickens had been promised great things. His father had told him he would be someone special. He had been taught to read, to write, to think, to dream. He had imagined himself as a lawyer, a writer, a man of importance. And now he was pasting labels on bottles of boot polish. Now he was the young gentleman among the street urchins. Now he was nobody, nothing, just another child laborer in a city full of child laborers. "No words can express," he would write decades later, "the secret agony of my soul as I sunk into this companionship, compared these everyday associates with those of my happier childhood, and felt my early hopes of growing up to be a learned and distinguished man crushed in my breast." The worst part was the abandonment. His family was in the Marshalsea, together. His mother, his father, his younger siblings, they were together, behind bars, but together. Charles was alone. He was sent to live in a lodging house in Camden Town with a woman who took in boarders. He had a small room, a bed, nothing else. He walked to the warehouse every morning, worked all day, and walked back every evening. On Sundays, he was allowed to visit his family in the prison. He would walk across London, miles and miles, to see them. He would spend the day with them in the prison, watching them live, their strange, confined life. And then he would walk back to his lodging, alone. I know I do not exaggerate, unconsciously and unintentionally, the scantiness of my resources and the difficulties of my life, he wrote. I know that if a shilling or so were given me by anyone, I spent it in a dinner or a tea. I know that I worked, from morning to night, with common men and boys, a shabby child. 3 months passed, and then, miraculously, salvation came. A family member died and left John Dickens an inheritance, just enough to pay off his debts. He was released from prison. The family was reunited. Charles expected to return to school immediately. He expected his nightmare to be over, but his mother had other ideas. Elizabeth Dickens had become accustomed to Charles's wages. 6 shillings a week was not much, but it helped, and the boy was doing well at the factory. The manager had praised his work. Why should he stop? She argued for Charles to keep working. She tried to persuade her husband. She was warm, as Dickens would later write, for my being sent back. John Dickens disagreed. He saw what the factory was doing to his son, the shame, the despair, the slow death of hope. He insisted that Charles return to school. Charles returned to school, but he never forgave his mother. I never afterwards forgot. I never shall forget. I never can forget that my mother was warm for my being sent back, he wrote. The words have an almost biblical cadence, a repetition that suggests a wound beyond healing. I never afterwards forgot. I never shall forget. I never can forget. He never told anyone about the blacking factory, not his wife, Catherine, whom he married in 1836, not his 10 children, not his closest friends. He buried the memory so deep that he himself barely acknowledged it. Only once did he try to write it down, a fragment of autobiography, perhaps intended for publication, perhaps only for himself. He showed it to his friend John Forster, who would later use it in his biography of Dickens. But Dickens could not finish it. The memory was too painful. The shame was too deep. I do not write resentfully or angrily, he wrote, for I know how all these things have worked together to make me what I am. But even as he wrote those words, he was writing Scrooge. He was writing a story about a boy abandoned at Christmas, about a man who fears poverty above all things, about a miser who hoards money because he knows in his bones that the world will abandon you if you do not have money. Look at Scrooge through this lens. Look at the boy in the boarding school, alone on Christmas while other children go home to their families. That is Dickens, alone in his lodging house while his family lives in a debtor's prison. Look at Fan, the sister who rescues young Scrooge from his loneliness. Dickens's own sister Fanny was allowed to continue her education at the Royal Academy of Music, while Charles pasted labels. She was the talented one, the promising one, the one who deserved better things. She died young, like Fan, leaving behind a single child. Look at Scrooge's terror of poverty, his obsessive counting, his conviction that money is the only safety. This is Dickens's terror, transformed into fiction. The man who had seen his father dragged off to prison, who had known the shame of the blacking factory, who had learned in the hardest possible way that the world was cruel to those without money. Look at the transformation at the end, the joy, the generosity, the desperate desire to make up for lost time. This is the wish Dickens made for himself, the redemption he hoped was possible, the second chance he believed everyone deserved. A Christmas Carol is not just a ghost story. It is an exorcism. It is a man confronting his own past, his own fears, his own potential for coldness and cruelty. It is Dickens asking himself, what if I had not escaped the factory? What if I had become the thing I fear? And it is Dickens answering himself, even then, it would not be too late to change. October 1843. Charles Dickens is 31 years old. He is famous, perhaps the most famous writer in England. Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, The Old Curiosity Shop. Each novel has been a sensation. He is rich, celebrated, admired. He has everything he ever dreamed of. But he's also worried. His current novel, Martin Chuzzlewit, is not selling well. The sales figures are disappointing, and his publishers are grumbling. Meanwhile, his expenses keep growing. He has a large house, a large family. His wife, Catherine, is pregnant with their 5th child, and expensive tastes. He employs servants, hosts dinner parties, maintains a certain standard of living. He is afraid of running out of money. The fear is not rational. He is still wealthy by any normal standard. But it is deep. It comes from that place inside him that still remembers the blacking factory, that still knows what happens when the money runs out. In October, he travels to Manchester to speak at a charity event. The Manchester Athenaeum has invited him to address a fundraising dinner for worker education, the cause of teaching poor adults to read and write. He tours the industrial districts. He sees the factories, the slums, the masses of poor workers crammed into filthy housing. He sees children younger than he was when he worked at Warren's blacking, laboring in mills and mines. Something crystallizes. He writes to a friend, "I am going to write a little book about Christmas." He thinks it will take him a few weeks. A short story, something quick and light, something that will make money while he works on his serious novel. He has no idea what he is about to create. The story takes him over completely. He writes obsessively, compulsively, as if possessed. Every night, after finishing his work on Martin Chuzzlewit, he turns to his little book about Christmas and writes until the early hours of the morning. And every night, after writing, he walks. 15, 20 miles through London, through black streets and thieves' dens, across bridges and along the river, walking and walking, working out scenes in his head, talking to himself, laughing and weeping. He walks past the site of Warren's blacking factory. It has been torn down by now, replaced by something else, but he knows where it stood. He walks past Hungerford Stairs, where the boys used to load the boats. He walks through Camden Town, past the lodging house where he once lived alone. He is writing about Scrooge, but he is also writing about himself. He is writing about the boy he was and the man he became and the man he fears he could have been. I wept and laughed and wept again, he would later write to a friend, and excited myself in a most extraordinary manner in the composition. The writing takes 6 weeks. 6 weeks for a work that would outlive everything else he ever wrote. 6 weeks for a story that would still be read, performed, and loved 2 centuries later. He finishes on December 2nd, 1843. He collapses, exhausted, exhilarated, transformed. He has written himself a new ending. He has created a version of himself, the cold miser, the abandoned child, and given that version a chance at redemption. Whether he himself has been redeemed, he does not know, but he has written the book, and now the world will judge. Dickens decides to self-publish. He wants control over everything: the binding, the illustrations, the price, the design. He hires artists to create the illustrations. He insists on gilt edges, hand-colored plates, a red and gold cloth binding. The book must be beautiful. The book must be perfect. He prices it at 5 shillings, expensive for a short book, but not outrageously so. He wants it to be affordable to middle-class readers, the people who will spread its message. The production costs are enormous, higher than he anticipated, higher than they should be. The book is published on December the 19th, 1843. The first print run is 6,000 copies. It sells out by Christmas Eve. Dickens is elated. He calculates his profits, expects a windfall, £1,000 at least, enough to pay his expenses and fund his next project. He receives £230. The production costs have eaten into the profits. The beautiful binding, the gilt edges, the hand-colored plates. They have cost more than the sales have brought in, and worse is coming. Within weeks, pirated editions appear, cheap, ugly versions of the story, sold at a fraction of the price. Dickens sues, but the legal costs eat up any potential damages. He wins the case but loses money on the victory. The book that will define Christmas nearly bankrupts its author. But the public response is something beyond money. People write to Dickens from all over England, telling him the book has changed their lives. Factory owners read it and give their workers the day off. Businessmen read it and donate to charity. Families reconcile. Old grudges are forgotten. Thomas Carlyle, the great essayist and philosopher, reads A Christmas Carol and is so moved that he hosts his first Christmas party. He had never celebrated Christmas before. A businessman in America reads the story and sends a donation to a hospital. A landlord forgives a debt. A father reaches out to an estranged son. The letters pour in, thousands of them over the years, and they all say the same thing. This book made me want to be better. This book reminded me what matters. This book saved me. Dickens has done something remarkable. He has written a sermon that does not feel like a sermon. He has preached generosity and kindness and love without ever becoming preachy. He has made people want to change, not because they feel guilty, but because they feel hope. And he has given Christmas its modern shape. Before A Christmas Carol, Christmas was a fading holiday. The Puritans had banned it in the 1600s, considering it too pagan, too rowdy, too Catholic. After the Restoration it returned, but it never fully recovered its former glory. By the early 1800s, it was a minor celebration, a church service, perhaps a special dinner, but nothing like the cultural centerpiece it would become. Dickens changed all that. He gave us the modern Christmas, family gatherings, feasting, generosity to the poor, ghost stories by the fire. He gave us the phrase "Merry Christmas," which explodes in popularity after the book's publication. He gave us the word Scrooge, which enters the language almost immediately. He gave us Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit and the ghost of Christmas yet to come. He did not invent Christmas, but he reinvented it. He took a declining holiday and transformed it into something that would outlive empires. In 1853, 10 years after A Christmas Carol was published, Dickens made a discovery that would change the rest of his life. He began reading his work aloud at charity events. He had done this before, in a small way, reading scenes to friends, performing for dinner parties. But now he began reading to audiences of hundreds, then thousands. And he discovered that he was an extraordinary performer. He did not just read, he acted. He became Scrooge, his face contorting into a mask of avarice and contempt. He became Bob Cratchit, humble and hopeful. He became Tiny Tim, his voice high and clear, breaking on the words, "God bless us, everyone." Audiences wept. They laughed. They gasped. They gave standing ovations that lasted for minutes. They crowded the stage doors afterward, hoping for a glimpse of him. Dickens had found his calling, not just as a writer, but as a performer. And A Christmas Carol became his signature piece. He performed it more than any other work, 127 times over 2 decades. He developed a special shortened version, about 2 hours long, that hit all the emotional beats. He knew every pause, every inflection, every moment when the audience would gasp or weep or laugh. The readings were electrifying. People who attended them described life-changing experiences. They felt they were in the presence of something sacred, not just entertainment, but transformation. But the readings were also destroying him. Each performance took everything Dickens had. He threw himself into it completely. Every emotion, every ounce of energy, every fiber of his being. He would collapse afterward, drained, exhausted, barely able to speak. His doctors warned him. His friends begged him to stop. They could see what the readings were doing to his health. The pallor, the exhaustion, the tremors in his hands. He suffered from strokes, weakness, episodes where he could barely stand. He would not stop. "It was as if they were all my personal friends," he said of his audiences. The readings made him feel alive, connected, loved. They gave him something that no amount of money or fame could provide. And perhaps there was something else. Perhaps the readings were his penance. Perhaps every time he became Scrooge, every time he walked through the transformation from coldness to warmth, he was doing something for his own soul. Perhaps he was still trying to save the boy in the blacking factory. In 1869, at the age of 57, Dickens embarked on his final reading tour. He was visibly ill. He walked with a limp. His face was grey and drawn. His doctors were desperate. They told him that continuing the readings would kill him. He continued anyway. On March 15th, 1870, in London, Charles Dickens gave his final public reading of A Christmas Carol. The audience knew it was the last time. Word had spread. The hall was packed. Every seat filled. People standing in the aisles. Crowds gathering outside hoping to catch some fragment of the performance through the windows. Dickens performed Scrooge's transformation one last time. He spoke Tiny Tim's blessing one last time. He bowed, and the audience rose to its feet, and the applause went on and on and on. When it finally stopped, Dickens stepped forward. There were tears in his eyes. "From these garish lights," he said, his voice breaking, I vanish now forevermore, with a heartfelt, grateful, respectful, and affectionate farewell. He left the stage. He never performed again. 3 months later, on June 8th, 1870, Charles Dickens suffered a massive stroke at his home in Gad's Hill. He never regained consciousness. He died the next day. He was 58 years old. Dickens had asked for a simple, private funeral. He wanted to be buried in the graveyard at Rochester Cathedral, near his home, with only his immediate family present. He wanted no public mourning, no grand ceremony. His wishes were overruled. On June 14th, 1870, Charles Dickens was buried in Westminster Abbey, in Poets' Corner, among the greatest writers in the English language. The funeral was private, as he had requested, but the grave was left open for 3 days afterward, so that the public could pay their respects. Thousands came. They filed past the grave in silence, many of them weeping. They left flowers, letters, copies of his books. They mourned him like a member of their own families. The boy from the blacking factory was laid to rest among kings and poets. A Christmas Carol has never been out of print. In the 181 years since its publication, it has been adapted hundreds of times for stage, film, television, radio, opera, ballet, graphic novels, and countless other forms. Every generation creates its own version. Every adaptation is a tribute. Alistair Sim, George C. Scott, Michael Caine, with the Muppets, Patrick Stewart, Bill Murray, Jim Carrey. The list goes on and on, each actor bringing something new to Scrooge, each version finding new meaning in the story. And it is not just adaptations. The book itself continues to sell, millions of copies every year. Schools teach it, churches read it, families pass it down from generation to generation. The words have entered the language. Scrooge is a word now. We all know what it means. Bah humbug is a phrase we recognize immediately. God bless us, everyone, has become a kind of secular prayer. Dickens died believing he had failed in some essential way. His marriage had collapsed. He and Catherine separated in 1858 in a scandal that damaged his reputation. His health was ruined by the readings he could not stop giving. His later novels, while successful, never matched the impact of his early work. He never knew that A Christmas Carol would outlive all of it. He never knew that his little book about Christmas would still be read, performed, and loved 2 centuries later. He never knew that he had created something immortal. Here is the truth about A Christmas Carol. It is not really about ghosts. It is not even really about Christmas. It is about time. It is about the terror of wasting your life, of looking back and seeing all the chances you missed, all the love you refused, all the joy you denied yourself. It is about the hope, the desperate, fragile hope that it is not too late to change. Scrooge is shown his past, the boy he was, the choices he made, the love he lost. He is shown his present, the suffering around him that he refuses to see, the family that loves him despite everything, the dying child he could save. He is shown his future, death unmourned, a life that meant nothing, a grave already forgotten. And then he is given something that none of us are guaranteed: another chance. He wakes up. He is alive. The time before him is his own to make amends in. This is the fantasy at the heart of the story. Not the ghosts, not the magic, but the possibility of transformation. The idea that a human being can change, fundamentally, completely, permanently, in a single night. Can we change? Can anyone really change? Dickens believed we could. He had to believe it, because the alternative, the idea that we are trapped in our worst selves, unable to escape, condemned to repeat our mistakes forever, was unbearable to him. He had seen too much darkness. He had known too much suffering. He needed to believe in redemption. And so he wrote it. He created Scrooge, the worst version of himself, the man he feared he could become. And then he redeemed him. He gave Scrooge the second chance that he himself desperately wanted. Every Christmas Eve, somewhere in the world, someone is reading a Christmas carol. Someone is watching Scrooge wake on Christmas morning, his heart full of joy, his life transformed. Someone is hearing Tiny Tim say those 4 immortal words. Someone is crying, perhaps, crying with relief, with hope, with the sudden, fierce conviction that things can be better. And somewhere, in some place beyond time, in some corner of the human imagination where stories live forever, the ghost of a 12-year-old boy is finally at peace. He is the boy in the blacking factory. He is the boy who was abandoned on Christmas. He is the boy who pasted labels on bottles while his family lived in prison. He is the boy who knew, in his deepest heart, that the world was cruel and that money was the only protection against cruelty. But he is also the man who escaped, the man who became the most famous writer in England, the man who used his suffering to create something beautiful, something lasting, something that has brought joy to millions of people for almost 2 centuries. Charles Dickens took his pain and transformed it into a gift. He took his fear and made it into hope. He took the worst Christmas of his life, alone, abandoned, working in a factory, and he wrote a story about a man who learns, on Christmas Eve, that it is never too late to change. He wrote himself a happy ending, and in doing so, he gave one to the world. Every year when December comes, when the lights go up and the carols begin, when families gather and gifts are wrapped and the air smells of cinnamon and pine, remember this: a man who knew what it was to be alone wrote a story about connection. A man who knew what it was to be afraid wrote a story about courage. A man who knew what it was to be cold wrote a story about warmth. He gave us Christmas as we know it. He gave us Scrooge and Tiny Tim and the ghosts that haunt us toward our better selves. He gave us the belief that transformation is possible, that even the coldest heart can thaw, that even the longest night ends in morning. He knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, every one. If you've enjoyed this journey into the story behind Christmas's most famous ghost story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We explore the great stories that have shaped our culture, not just the dark ones, but the powerful ones, the enduring ones, the tales that remind us why storytelling matters. In the comments, tell me, what's your favorite adaptation of A Christmas Carol? And do you think Dickens's message still resonates today? Or has it been lost in the commercialization of Christmas? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Charles Dickens's masterpiece. Thank you for walking with me through Victorian London, through the counting house and the graveyard, and through the mind of the man who saved Christmas. May the story live forever, and may we never forget the boy who brought the ghost to life.